Every time I talk to a veteran and I ask him, hey man, have you made a VA disability claim? And they answer no. When I ask them why, the number one answer that I get is I don't know where to start. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't understand the process. So before you file your next VA claim or your first VA claim, you need to know this. The VA doesn't rate on effort or likability. The VA rates on evidence. And evidence follows the research. My name is Ryan Finnegan from VA Disability Claims Explained. And in this three-part series, The Basics of Building a Strong VA Claim, we are going to start part one with research because research is the most important part of your claim. And we'll follow an RGO method: research, gather, and organize. So before I start to gather or organize, we're going to talk all things research so that you can put yourself on the right path to a solid claim. So with that said, let's roll. So why do most claims fail or they're underrated before they're even filed? One, the veteran claims without knowing what the VA actually is looking for. And if I don't know what the VA is looking for, it is hard for me to make a solid VA claim. It's hard for me to provide the evidence that you need to give me the rating that I deserve. And trust me, my first three claims, I had no idea what the VA needed. So one of them I underprovided because I didn't provide anything. The second one I overprovided with stuff because I was guessing. And it wasn't until my fourth claim that I was taught what to look at. And from there, my claims skyrocketed because I knew exactly what the VA needed so I could go get it. Because the VA isn't going to connect the dots. You can't give the VA rater or the VA in your disability claims process your lower lumbar spine or your back MRI and say, here it is, I got pain, go give me a rating. Because they're not going to go do the work, right? It just doesn't happen that way. It is your responsibility, it is your claim to go get them to research, to connect the dots for them so that when they look at it, they go, oh, okay, it makes sense. I'm going to give this guy this rating because they're rating under federal law. So don't think that they're going to connect the dots for you. And your research is going to tell you what conditions you can claim, what evidence matters and needs to be provided. So again, the big three you got to have. You're going to hear me say it 3 or 4 times probably this presentation. Current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus to a military service, an event, an injury, an illness, or a location. So I've got to understand what symptoms they are looking for, and I need to highlight those symptoms without lying or exaggerating. I'm simply going to give them the symptoms that they need, which matches the condition I have, and what symptoms that I'm researching are what triggers the best ratings possible. Because again, you don't want to go out and highlight a bunch of symptoms that you have, but those are all 10 percenters. And then before you know it, when you go back and look later, you're like, why did I only get rated at 10%? I've got all these issues because you didn't rate the symptoms in the 20, 30, or 50% category. So understand the symptoms that trigger those so that I can make sure that I start to highlight them and get them adequately captured. But bottom line, you're not going to start a claim, you're going to build a claim. But the biggest thing, what I want you to do is if you have a service condition, that you think I have this condition that I can tie, or I am almost positive that I can tie to my military service, I want you to call the 1-800 number today, and I want you to simply tell the VA that you want to file your intent to file for a disability claim. That's it. Don't tell them what you're claiming. Just say, hey, I would like to file my intent to file. That will lock in your back date for your back pay, which can be sizable depending on how big your claim is and how long it goes. And it puts you on a 12-month clock that at some point in that next 12 months, you're going to drop your official claim paperwork and your medical evidence that shows the condition that you have to get a rating. So very important. Call today, call tomorrow, put it on your calendar, make it a priority, because if you wait 4, 5, 6 months from now and you drop your claim paperwork and you go from 0 to 80, you've just lost out on $12,000 to $18,000 of tax-free money. So call today, make it a priority. So when we start talking about research is not Googling symptoms, right? The big three that we're looking at when we do our research to understand the VA disability claim game, and I call it a game because if you understand how the process works, right, you're in the ball game. I'm going to look at, is this a recognized condition that I have? How does the VA rate it? So, what symptoms are they looking for? What is the frequency, severity, impact? Right? How is the VA going to rate me for it? And then what proof does the VA require? That is the key thing. What do I need to show through my medical evidence that I have this condition outside of just having the condition? So if I go in and I make a claim for depression and anxiety because I went in, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. All right, great. But I don't provide them any symptoms. I don't go to therapy. I don't go to counseling. I don't highlight the symptoms that I have. And then I just make the claim and the VA looks at that. They go, okay, fine. We'll service connect that. 0%. Because I'm not providing them the evidence that they need, the proof that they need to make an accurate VA rating. So we talk symptoms first, labels second. Veterans fixate on getting the diagnosis. And again, you got to have the big three: current diagnosis, current symptoms, and a nexus to military service. But the VA will rate on functional impact, not how tough you are. Trust me, I know most of you have a very high pain tolerance. The VA isn't going to rate on that. They're going to rate on the functional impact that your conditions and your symptoms have on your personal and professional life. So what they're looking for is severity, frequency, duration, and impact on life and work. So if you go in there and I was told in my next to last claim, actually going into my last claim, that my complaining sucked, that I was being too much of a Marine when I went in because I would tell them, yeah, well, my pain is bad, right? But pain is bad is like a mild to moderate. Like when I have severe shooting pain down my foot, that I'll drop the F-bomb out of nowhere in church if need be, because the pain is so intense that I need to make sure that I highlighted that. So you need to understand that the severity of your symptoms, the frequency, the duration, and what the impact is on your life goes to the VA giving you an accurate rating. If you go in and just say, I have knee pain, you're going to get service connected because if the document shows that your knee pain was started by an in-service injury, event, illness, or condition. Okay, cool, great. You have knee pain. 0%. You're like, I can barely walk. I have, daily knee pain. It worsens when I stand. It limits my walking to less than a quarter of a mile. It causes me instability. I'm a trip hazard or I'm a fall hazard. I have to sit down and rest every 20 to 30 minutes because the pain is so excruciating and it radiates down my leg and it just aches. Which one do you think, if you're a rater, are you going to give a solid rating to? The I have a knee pain or everything that I just described? And I'm just not describing that once. Every time I go to the doctor and we talk about my knee pain, I'm highlighting those symptoms. Because if I have nothing in my medical record and all of a sudden I'm sitting at my compensation and pension exam and I lay all that out, but I have no evidence to prove it, the VA is probably going to make the decision that either that is not service connected, or you don't want them to think you're fraudulent, like, well, you don't have any evidence, now you're lying to us. What else are you lying to us about? Let me go look at your other claims that you don't have the evidence for. So make sure that you're highlighting severity, frequency, duration, impact to life. Every appointment that you go to, physical therapy, chiropractor, pain doc, your primary care provider, you want to continue to have the evidence and the current symptoms to be able to continue to upload for your claim. So when you go to your compensation and pension exam, you can pull those out and show the provider or the examiner. So bottom line, symptoms lead you to a condition, not the other way around. Your condition doesn't cause symptoms. Your symptoms will lead you to what your condition is. Now, you're going to hear me say over and over and over again in every video that I do, the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. The 38 CFR, the 38 Code of Federal Regulations is the VA law on how they rate disability claim. So you're going to hear me say it. You probably have if you watch my other videos. The VA rates on federal law. Part 4 is the schedule of rating for disabilities. So we're going to move from here. We're going to open up the Code of Federal Regulations, and we're going to show you exactly what it looks like. But in there, you're going to find diagnostic codes. You're going to find the rating percentages and then the symptoms threshold. So the set of symptoms that the VA is looking for will match what the rating percentage is. So it's important to do your research on the condition that you have so that you can highlight the appropriate symptoms first in the highest categories. Again, you're not exaggerating it, because the higher the symptoms that are on there, the more severe the condition is. I want to get those conditions taken care of first in my treatment plan. Then I do a whole bunch of little small, what I'll call 0 and 10 percenters. If I've got some 30s and 50s, I definitely, especially when it comes to mental health, if I have some 70s and 50s in that symptoms, I want to address those to work on those, because those are the severity and the frequency of those probably make your life not as fun. So look at those and we'll show you what I'm talking about. But in plain English, each condition has a menu of symptoms. If you meet the criteria, you earn a rating. If you're missing wording, if you're missing evidence, if you're missing symptoms, you're going to get denied or underrated. So if it isn't in the CFR, which is the VA law, the VA can't rate it. So with that said, let's hop over. Let's take a look at a CFR for depression so you can see what I'm talking about. Now, the easiest way to get to a Code of Federal Regulations is simply just to type in whatever condition that you have, VA disability, CFR. So, depression, CFR, VA disability claim. Don't worry about the spelling. It'll still pick it up. And you'll see here the eCFR, the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. And you can open it up, and then what it will do is when we talk about the schedule ratings, it will tell you basically to the rater and to you that this rating schedule is based on the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic and Statistic Manual for Mental Disorders, or the DSM-5, which I think they're coming out with the DSM-6, but that's always changing. But you can see the codes down here. Now, if I go here and I look for things like the general rating formula for mental disorders. Now, each one is a little different. We'll show you like a knee condition. Actually, we'll show you migraines so you'll see. But when you look in the schedule of ratings or schedule 4, like it breaks things down. It doesn't go in there and tell you like if you're making a neck claim, it's this. It may be under the musculoskeletal section. So it's always easier just go to Google and look for the condition that you have. But when we start looking at our symptoms over here in this left-hand category, the rating over here is the rating that they'll give you based on the symptoms that you have. So when we talk about like those 0 and 10 percenters, if I spend my time talking about occupational and social impairment with mild transit symptoms, which decrease work efficiency, but it's not continuous, right? It only occurs during periods of significant stress. So what I'm telling them is that my symptoms only occur when I'm really stressed out. And if that is the case, that is okay, right? To get a 10% rating, that is okay. But if I start to look at some things like my mental health, my depression, anxiety, my post-traumatic stress, whatever case you have, right, has occupation and social impairment with deficiencies in most areas such as work, school, family relations, judgment, thinking, mood, obsessional rituals which interfere with routine activities, speech intermittently illogical. So if I have those claims, again, those are the more severe claims. So if I have 2 or 3 of these, and I have 3 or 4 of these, I want to make sure that I address those, one, with my therapist, because I want my treatment plan to reflect those. Because as you can see, these are the most severe claims outside of the 100 percenters. But I want to make sure that those are addressed so that I can continue to get treatment. And my treatment goes to try to, I don't want to say fix those, but make those better so that I can live a better life. I can have better relationships. I can be more socially functioned. I can be more productive at work and life. So I want to make sure that I highlight these. And I want to highlight the frequency, the severity, how long they last, and how it impacts my life and, what work or personal life. So it's important every time that I'm in with my therapist that I am bringing up these conditions, right? Don't bring them up once and then you don't talk about them for 3 months or 4 months in a therapy session. So there's no notes on them. And then you go to your compensation and pension exam and now all of a sudden, like, you have all of these, right? So you want to make sure that you continue to highlight those symptoms. All right, so next I want to pull up migraines. So if we look up migraines, it's the 38 Code of Federal Regulations, schedule ratings for neurological conditions. Now, this one I like to do because there is a whole bunch of these. So when the page is really long and you don't, you want to skip time and not read through them, do the old trick of Control F. You can type in migraine and you can skip through until you find them. So, miscellaneous diseases, section 8100 migraine. So just this section right here is migraines. You can look at them. They rate it 0, 10, 30, 50%. So 0%, less frequent attacks. So your migraines happen once a quarter, once every 4, 5, 6, 7 months, once a year, right? The VA may rate you at, those migraines are service connected, but they may rate you at a 0%. And that's okay. Because when the VA rates you as a service connected, even at a 0%, just means that you don't have the symptoms to get a 10% rating. So they're not going to give you compensation for it. But here's the two things that it works for your favor. One, it's service connected. When something is service connected, it means the VA will take care of that for life. So any medications you need, treatments you need, injections you need, the VA is going to take care of that for you. Two is if I have a service connection at 0, but I have secondary conditions. So my migraine may cause, 2 or 3 different things. It is easier to get a secondary condition because of the service connected condition that it is. So if I have migraines and migraines cause me, insomnia or whatever. And without looking up secondary conditions, don't claim insomnia unless it's an actual secondary condition. But let's just say for the ease of this, not looking up a whole bunch of stuff, I have insomnia. I believe that my migraines and my medical doctor, my provider, my neurologist thinks that my insomnia is caused by my migraines. It is easier for me to service connect my secondary condition to the migraines, because if migraines are known to cause insomnia, I have insomnia. Therefore, my nexus is migraines are causing my insomnia. So it's a lot easier to service connect that than it is to go in and get an initial service connection. So don't be upset when you get a service connection of 0% rating, because that can actually help you in the long run. But when we start to look at like a 10% rating, prostrating attacks. Prostrating just means that you have to lie down in a dark room and do nothing but sit in the quiet and hope to God that your headaches go away or your migraines, which if you have those, trust me, I know they suck. So I look at this, prostrating attacks averaging 1 and 2 months over the last several months. So we have a headache tracker that is very important. Because what a headache tracker is it's lay evidence. So you go through and you track your migraines, and I always tell people, track them for 2 or 3 or 4 months. So drop your intent to file for your disability claim, and then start to build, if you're going to do a migraine claim, 3 or 4 months of your migraine tracker, because what you want the VA to look at is a snapshot of what your life looks like every day of the month. And each month is going to be different. Some months you may have 2, other months you may have 6, other months you may have 4. So what the VA doesn't do is they're not going to average those out and go, you gave me 3, so that's, 16 divided by 3, you get, 5.3 a month. They don't do that. What they look at, though, is it gives them a snapshot of what your symptoms look like over a period of time. So that is much better than giving them 1 month, because they're simply going to look at that, especially when they look at over the last several months. So you want to give them that look. You get to 30%. Characteristic prostrating attacks occurring on average once a month over the last several months. Again, key, last several months. I need to give them several months worth of lay evidence, because no one, let's just admit it, no one goes to the ER every time that you have a migraine. So you can go in and you can tell them, oh, well, I get, on average 5 a month. And they're like, okay, cool. Or if you're like most veterans, you go, I don't know, I get a couple a month. A couple to the VA is 0 to 1. Right? Don't give them that. Give them a migraine tracker that will allow them to look at several months worth of migraines to be able to go, okay, you average, at least 1 a month over the last several months. And if you get frequent, completely prostrating, which means you are out, you are in a room, you are in the dark, and those prolonged attacks cause productive of severe economic inadaptability. You have to leave work, you miss work, you don't go to work. It starts to affect, remember we talked about severity, frequency, but the impact on both work and life, right? If you have more than 3 in a month and you can show that, and the migraine tracker that we have that's in the book, How to Build a Strong VA Disability Claim First Time, gives you an example of those. But if I can show that I have more than 3 a month and they cause severe economic impact because I have to miss work, this is where using a buddy statement from your boss or your supervisor that says, yes, Ryan often, misses several days of work due to migraines, or has to leave early, or is not productive, right? That is all evidence to your claim. So when we look at these, the Code of Federal Regulations, I want to look at what symptoms that I have, what is the rating schedule for it, and I want to make sure that I highlight the symptoms that I have to the rating that it is. And again, you don't have to have, all 50% to get 50. Now, migraines are different, but if we go back to the depression, right, I don't have to have all 70s to get a 70% rating. I can have some 50s and I can have some 70s, but if my 70s are more severe and they impact my severity, frequency, duration, and they impact my life, the VA may opt to give me that 70% rating. So let's go back. Now, the DBQ. DBQ is cool because DBQ is the form that either your provider, or if the VA sends you out to a compensation and pension exam, that the CMP examiner has to fill out to provide to the VA, which gives them, it guides that medical exam of you. It's not to find what's wrong with you. It's to guide the exam, to ask the questions that they need. So why do you want to research this? One, it gives you the answers. It gives you the questions that they're going to ask you before they even ask you. So this allows you, it's kind of like going in for a job interview. If you go in for a job interview, more than likely at some point you probably looked up like what are the 10 common interview questions, and you start to study those, right? So that you can prep your answers so that when you come and you're like, there it is. Like, what are my weaknesses? I have an answer for those versus just staring at everybody going, I don't know, man. I never really thought about what my weaknesses were. So it's important to look up the questions that they're going to ask you before they ask you so that you can have your answers prepared and you can have the evidence ready to show them. It gives you the time to also prepare what medical evidence you have, or maybe what medical evidence, more importantly, that you don't have that you need to go get. So they may ask, like, is there any imaging or is there anything that shows this? And you're like, I haven't had an MRI or an x-ray, on my back in 11 years. I should probably go get that so that I can give them the most current information that there is. So take the time to look at the DBQ, And I always advise people, print out the DBQ. Right, you can go in and fill out the DBQ for the questions that you know. There's probably a lot of questions that you don't know, and some of those like sleep apnea, diabetes, your hearing loss. Those are all numbers and decibels. So those you may not know. But when we look at things like mental health or knee pain or back pain or shoulder pain, or sleep apnea, or not sleep apnea, but any kind of sleep condition, those I can go in and I look and see what questions are they going to ask me so I can get my evidence ready. And if I don't have the evidence, I'm going to go get it. So look at it as a study guide for you to fill out before you go. And you don't have to give them your DBQ. They're not going to take it. Yours isn't evidence. But if I do that within plenty of time of my either my compensation and pension exam or even just throughout my doctor's appointments, is I can start to look at what did this occur. I can go find the evidence. I can write the date down. What makes it better? What makes it worse? So I can start to answer those. And when I get to the compensation and pension exam, as the questions start going down, I can look and follow along. I know what's coming next. I know maybe I have on there highlighted, excuse me, where my evidence is located, what sheet it's on, whether it's tabbed. That way I'm not fumbling through my stuff. I know what's coming, and it's the 5th page in. So I'm going to pull the 5th page out, and I'm going to show it to them because you only have a limited amount of time. So by having your stuff prepared, ready, marked to be able to show them, that's going to make your claim go so much smoother, and it's going to make sure that you highlight the symptoms, severity, frequency, and impact so that you don't walk out the door and go, oh man, I need to go back in and tell them this, because once you walk out and that thing is closed, it's closed. They're not going to let you back in to go answer that question. So print it out, take a look. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go open up a DBQ and we're going to show you exactly what we're looking for so that you can better prepare and start to do your research early. Okay, again, easiest way to get to the DBQ is I simply want to go to Google and put DBQ depression, DBQ lower lumbar strain, DBQ degenerative disc disease, cervical spine, whatever the case may be. The first one that's going to pull up is the VA's website. So as you're going to see here, right, this is the form that your provider, you can ask your provider to fill this out, especially if you've seen them for quite some time, and some of you have seen your provider for years, is that if they'll fill this out, the VA can elect to accept that as the evidence that they need and not send you to a compensation and pension. But I've known people that have turned in a DBQ and the VA sent them out for a third-party compensation and pension. Whatever, not my call. But anyway, when we start looking at the questions, these are provider type of questions, but you start to look at diagnosis. Does the veteran have or has been diagnosed with a mental disorder? Again, this is for depression. They put yes, there's that ICD code, that diagnostic code, and you don't have to go find that. That'll be provided, because once they give you a condition or they give you, you have major depressive disorder, that automatically comes with an ICD. Oh, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have post-traumatic stress, you've got the genetic, whatever the case may be, it will generate that diagnostic code. But you go through here and you start to look at, various questions that they're going to have. Does this veteran have more than one mental disorder diagnosed? So you're talking about post-traumatic stress and anxiety, depression and anxiety, various things. But again, you don't need to necessarily worry about like all of these questions, but you want to look at some of these, and does the evidence of record show a diagnosis of traumatic brain injury for the veterans? So if you've had a TBI, if you've had a concussion, right, and you have documentation of it, you can show, yes, I have a TBI that goes along with this. And they may come down here and they may ask, like, have you ever had a TBI? Yes, I have. I know it's part of the evidence. So I want to pull out that evidence to show, here's when I got my first one. I've had, 7 concussions Not all documented, but here's the situation. So it allows them, you're answering the questions that they need. So you can go through here and it'll talk about occupation with social impairment. Again, when we went back to the Code of Federal Regulations, we looked at the symptoms. So I want to look at those symptoms in the 70, 50, 30 category, right? And it will start to ask, no mental diagnosis. A medical condition has been formally diagnosed, but symptoms are not severe enough to interfere with occupational things. Then you look here, total occupation and social impairment. Those all come from your notes, your medical evidence. But if they're going to ask, a question, they may not go through all of these. And again, when you go through this compensation and pension exam, this is going to be with a psychiatrist or a psychologist that's going to run this checklist. So they're going to ask you a bunch of questions that deal with social impairment. They're not going to go, hey, do you have total and social impairment? No, they're going to have a conversation with you. And what they're looking for is the answer to these questions in here so they can mark these. Evidence review. This is key, right? No records reviewed, records reviewed. You want to give them a copy of your medical records. I always made a copy for my compensation and pension examiner, and I gave it to them. Even though they didn't want it, even though it was like this thick, it was always tabbed out. We're going to get in the organization in step 3 of this series, but I want them to be able to review the records. That way, when I leave and they have the time, they can go through and they can look at what records I provided them. So take a look at the symptoms, again, severity, impact, frequency, so that you can answer these questions and you can start to dial these up and these symptoms now in your therapy sessions. And look, if you ain't going for therapy for your mental health provider and you got post-traumatic stress, you've got depression, you've got anxiety, you've got any of that hypervigilance, look, I'm going to tell you right up front, you need to consider going to a mental health provider. I get it. There's a whole bunch of reasons you don't want to. One, it's going to help you live a better life, but it's going to help you to address the symptoms that you have. So the whole goal is to not just get a good VA claim so that you can, get tax-free money and benefits. It's to actually help you diagnose what is wrong so that you can live a better life. So now that I'm off my soapbox, let's go back. So when we talk about your research, right? When we research, I want you to answer these 5 questions. 1, does my condition match my symptoms? Again, I may have the conditions, but my symptoms that I'm telling them don't match what the condition is, or, I have symptoms that don't necessarily match what the condition is. And I think I probably said that, and I probably said it a little backwards, but I want to make sure that those two match so that it makes sense to the VA and it makes sense in my compensation and pension, that when I tell you I have these symptoms, the rater can look at that and say, yep, your symptoms directly match the condition you have. For example, if you talk about having radiating pain down your lower extremity, your right leg, but you have nothing wrong, you have no back complaints, right? The VA is going to have a hard time going, okay, well, you're not showing us anything that's wrong with your back, but you're telling us you have radiating pain down your leg. Sorry, we can't service connect that because you have nothing that generates it. So you want to make sure that if I'm going to claim radiating pain or radiculopathy down my lower extremities, that I have a back issue. So I want to make sure that those two connect. What diagnostic code applies? Again, every diagnostic code, every condition you have has a diagnostic code or an ICD. You don't have to worry about that, but you want to make sure that if I have a condition, that I have a diagnostic code, and I want to just take the time to research to make sure that diagnostic code falls under that Code of Federal Regulations so that I'm claiming the appropriate thing. And then what symptoms trigger higher ratings? Again, when we start to talk about that, I want to look at what my symptoms are. I want to look at the symptoms that they're going to rate because I don't want to highlight all my 10s and leave out my 30s and 50s. I want to start with my 50s. I want to then go to my 30s. And if there's time and there's space and room in the end, I want to highlight my 10s. But trust me, your 50s and 30s should be at the top of your complaint list. your severity, your frequency, your duration, and your impact to your personal and professional life, because those, one, are the worst, but two, those are what are going to trigger the higher ratings. And what medical evidence proves the symptoms. So if there's in there and the VA is looking to claim, my depression VA claim, and they're looking for a set of symptoms, well, then what symptoms do I need to highlight, and do I need to provide them to show that how severe, frequent, and intense my symptoms are? Because if I'm not matching symptoms and severity and frequency, the VA may opt to rate me, but they'll rate me under what I need to be. So figure out what medical evidence proves those symptoms, and then ask yourself, what am I missing before I file? When you file your intent to file, you have 12 months to file a claim. Don't tell the VA until you are ready to go. Until you go to a veteran service officer and you ask them, hey, I am ready to claim. I have all my evidence. Can you file the claim paperwork for me? But I want to look at, what am I missing? What evidence am I missing? Am I missing a personal statement? Am I missing buddy statements if I need to? Am I missing a Nexus letter that ties my condition to my military service, event, injury, illness, location? Am I missing, is all my current documents, are they old? Am I missing current symptoms? Right? Again, current diagnosis, current symptoms, and Nexus. Do I have a current diagnosis? Do I have a current symptoms? I have a current diagnosis, but my symptoms are 3 years old. Okay, I need to stop. I got the next 12 months. I'm going to spend the next 4 months and I'm going to go in as much as I can to get those symptoms highlighted, and then any type of treatment that there is. So what gets you denied? One, filing claims just to see what happens. Relying on the VSO intake questions. They're going to come in, they're going to ask, what's wrong? What do you have? What medical evidence? Don't assume that is your compensation and pension exam, or that all those answers, they're going to type those in and the VA is going to go, oh, well, you told your VSO this. It's not going to happen. Biggest one, not reading the CFR rating criteria. Again, I've got to look up the symptoms and I've got to look up the percentage, and I need to understand that so that I can provide the evidence that matches where I'm at. And I'm assuming that the VA or the CMP examiner is just going to figure it out. Well, I gave him my MRI for my neck. It shows I got 4 bulging discs. Like, why didn't they figure out that I got migraines and radiating pain down all 4 limbs, and that the pain radiates down the middle of my back? Why didn't they figure it out? It's right there. It's in the notes, right? No, I've got to build the claim myself. It is my responsibility to build that claim, to give it to the VA, to be able to, when I go to my compensation and pension examiner, to adequately highlight my symptoms, frequency, severity, intensity, and my impact to my personal and professional life. That is my responsibility. That's why I want to look up the Disability Benefits Questionnaire. I want to look at the questions that they're going to ask me before they ask me, and I want to make sure that I'm highlighting symptoms that are in the highest categories of ones that I have at the right question. That way those two match and I can get an accurate rating, and I'm not leaving the VA or the compensation and pension examiner to go connect the dots for me, or they enjoy my likability and my sense of humor. So they're like, you know what? He's a funny dude. We're going to give him 50%. No, it's not going to happen. What you don't want to do, again, is not highlight them. Assume that they're going to do that and I get a 0% rating, or I don't get service connected at all. I get that condition denied, because the 2 biggest reasons out of the 30% denials that the VA sees every year: lack of diagnosis, lack of symptoms. And then the third one, you guessed it, lack of a nexus to military service. So if they're denying on lack of diagnosis, lack of current symptoms, and a nexus, I need to go get those 3 to provide those. So bottom line, the VA rewards on preparation, not effort. The preparation comes in the research, the RGO method, and the research, the gather, and the organization of your medical records. So again, your research is your blueprint. What am I looking at? What do I need to highlight? What direction I need to go? Okay, I've got that. I know what I've got to do. Now I'm going to go gather all the materials that I have so that I can look through what I have, and more importantly, what I don't have. What type of medical evidence do I need to get, or do I have it all? If I've got it all because I'm currently being treated and I've been in a chiropractor for the last 6 months consecutive, my last year, and all the reports generally look the same, that's cool. I have them all. Now I'm going to work on the organization. I'm going to work on the presentation of my story so that I can get an accurate claim. So the next video we're going to do in this series is on gather, and then the last one is on organize. But bottom line is, once you know what the target is, gathering the evidence becomes simple, because I'm not guessing, I'm not trying to figure it out, and I'm not going into my claim blind, like, oh, I didn't know. Because again, most of the veterans I've ever met will say, I don't even know where to start. Now you know where to start. I know where to start. I've got to start with research. I'm going to slow down and not rush my claim. I'm going to, if you haven't gotten it by now, I'm going to file my intent to file today or tomorrow, depending on when you're seeing this, or if it's on a weekend, on Monday. I'm going to file my intent to file. That is a priority. Then I'm going to use the RGO method. I'm going to research, gather, and organize, but I'm going to start my research project on what I need to do, what conditions I have, while I build these two. And if you're reading this or watching this later on, and the gather and the organize videos are out, I'm going to watch these 3 videos in order so that I can understand the process. But until then, I'm just going to simply start to research off of what I found in this one. And my research is going to remove my fear and confusion, and it targets the information I need to make a solid claim. I'm not under-providing, I'm not over-providing, and I'm certainly not giving them things that does not matter for my claim. Because trust me, you don't want to give them 100 pieces of evidence or 100 pieces of medical information if they only need 20. Give them the targeted information, and you'll get that through doing your research. So, what I want you to do next, if you haven't subscribed, I would ask you to consider subscribing to our page. And if you think that this video or any videos that we have will help just one veteran, I ask you to share it. And because the way YouTube works is they're not going to sit here and go, man, that was a great video. I ask you to, one, just drop me a comment. Let me know, hey, I like doing research. Research is my thing. I never understood that. Ask a question, figure out what it is, but drop a comment, give it a like, and then go to sign up for our 4 free checklists, right? These are important. They're free. This is going to start to send you on your way to making a solid VA claim. And then I encourage you to go pick up a copy of our book on Amazon, How to Build a Strong VA Disability Claim the First Time. And I've got this marked because I like to tab things, but this is going to show you on page 6 of the book. It starts to talk about research right off the bat. So that should tell you, if I put it on page 6 of my book, research is important. So if you need to, go through, rewatch this video again, pause it, like it, save it, and use it and bookmark it so you can continue to go back to go, what do I need to research? Code of Federal Regulations, check. Disability Benefits Questionnaire, check. What conditions I have? What symptoms do I have that makes the conditions? What condition I have, does my symptoms match it? And I all start to put these things together. But I start with research in the very beginning. And until next time, I'm going to ask you to slow down, learn the process, and build a claim the right way so you can see positive results. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next video.